What up? My name is Josh J1 Rayford, Vice President of Music Programming for Pandora, and I just jumped off the porch with Dirty Glove Bastard.
All my life, been grinding all my life. Sacrifice, hustle, pay the price.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got J1 jumping off the porch with us, Vice President of Music Programming at Pandora. What's up, bro? How you feeling today?
Man, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling blessed. Thank you for having me on your platform, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Nah, it's definitely a pleasure. Definitely want to, tap in with you. We, want to have people on the porch who, people in the industry outside of artists, execs, to be able to tell their stories and share their stories, because we also have followers that, aspire to be managers, execs, and just understand like the other side of the game.
Nah, I appreciate that, man. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity, because like you said, there's a lot of people out there that might not be an artist or might not have the talent to sing or rap or even produce or anything like that, but they still want to be around music. They still feel like they have something to contribute, and that was me growing up.
No, for sure.
So
for sure.
I appreciate this.
So, how was it, like growing up in a place so diverse, I've lived in New York, and it's just so interesting to me just how diverse it is. Just like you said, I mean, easily from one block to the next, different cultures, you just seeing so many different things.
Yeah, I mean, New York is definitely a melting pot. But me and my friends, we joke all the time. There's two types of people in New York. There's those that grow up in New York, leave and never come back. I'm probably one of those. Like, I come back for business and stuff, or if there's something going on. But then there's those that stay there their whole life, and they're just New Yorkers till they die. And I got friends like that as well. But again, I value my experience up there, because you just see so many different backgrounds, whether it's Black, Hispanic, Asian, white, and you get to see them at all different types of income levels. Like, I went to all different types of schools. I went to public schools and Catholic schools, and the stereotype growing up is you think all white people got money, but I went to school with white boys, because I went to an all boys Catholic school in high school, and their parents were just trying to make ends meet like everybody else. So, you see people from all walks of life. Yeah, we have our differences in our culture, but then we have those things that unite us, whether it's our spirituality, our beliefs, where we come from, and just our core values. Mm-hmm. And you realize once you get past like skin and race, that there aren't too many differences in certain people.
Right. What kind of kid would you say you were, like, growing up? Like, what were you into? More the arts, sports?
I was into all that. Like, I played sports in high school. I loved music. I mean, I grew up listening to like a lot of Motown stuff, because my parents loved Michael Jackson. They loved Prince. They loved Temptations, all that, the Supremes. So I would listen to them on vinyl. And growing up back then, the way that you got new music was the mixtape game. So I grew up listening to like DJ Clue mixtapes and DJ Envy and DJ S&S. So those were the guys that kind of really inspired me to get into DJing at an early age. And then, later on, I started seeing people like Sean Combs and Dave Dash and all these young Black music execs, because I love music, but I couldn't rap. I couldn't dance. I didn't have those type of talents. That's why I was like, I'm a DJ. Yeah. But I kind of saw myself when I saw them, because these guys were calling the shots. They were establishing businesses, but they were still living the lifestyle. They were still flashy. They talked like me. They dressed like me. They came from my neighborhood. So I said, why can't that be me? Why can't I be a Black executive in the music game one day?
All right. That's what's up. So when did you first fall in love with hip hop? Do you know, like, when you first like really tapped into the culture?
Man, I was a little kid. There was a song, I forget, it might have been by like the Fat Boys, and I couldn't have been no more than like 2 or 3 at the time, but the hook went, "You talk too much. Oh boy, you never shut up." And that's all I remember. And I remember singing that, and my grandmother was in the car visiting from North Carolina, and I kept singing it, and my dad, like, he got so mad. I think he wanted to throw me out the car and stuff. Man. But I didn't know no better. I just liked the song, and the hook was easy to remember. So as I was growing up, I just loved all types of hip hop. Of course, back then, East Coast hip hop was so dominant, and West Coast, of course. But I grew up listening to like Tribe Called Quest and Busta Rhymes and Wu-Tang Clan and Nas and Mobb Deep, and of course the whole Bad Boy Revolution, and then Death Row and stuff. Even though we was on the East Coast, I still love Tupac. I still love Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and all that stuff. Those guys were cool. I still love looking at that picture of the Source where it had the 4 of them, where it had Suge, Dre, Snoop, and Pac.
Yeah.
Like, that's an iconic picture right there.
So,
so those are the types of images in my head from my childhood that just attracted me to hip hop. And the first ever Source Awards, where the beef between Snoop or Death Row and Bad Boy, it really popped off on a national scale. And that's when, Suge was like, bring that joint to Death Row.
Right.
And Snoop was like, East Coast ain't got no love. And then don't forget, remember, that's when Outkast popped off and said, yo, the South got something to say.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
And I think that moment, that Source Awards, people talk about, oh man, the beef and all that stuff, but it really put hip hop on a national stage where everybody could show the pride that they had in their area, in their region. Yeah, whether you were from Cali, or you were from Brooklyn, New York, or you were from Atlanta, which wasn't as established in the music game at the time on a national scale, but was still doing their thing in the culture, Right. So those were the moments for me, man, that just made me fall in love with it. It was the music, but it was also the culture, the lifestyle. And I wasn't no street kid or anything like that. Like, I knew the street dudes, but that wasn't me. But I just loved hip hop culture, whether it was gangster rap, whether it was just lyricists or enlightening music. I was intrigued by it all.
That's what's up. What age were you when you jumped off the porch?
When I jumped off the porch? Yeah. What you mean?
So, we say when you jumped off the porch, that's like, kind of when you come of age, when you like just sort of step away, like maybe from your parents, tutelage, and like, step out there and become a man, for like a better words.
I think that happens in levels. There's times all throughout my life where I've always been very independent. I've always wanted to work and get my own money. Ever since I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and me and my best friend, we had a Kool-Aid stand. So we selling Kool-Aid on the street for $0.25 a cup. Then fast forward, I did an internship for the city of New York when I was like 13 years old, making $75 a week. And that was a big deal to me at the time.
Yeah.
So I've always been very independent in that aspect, even though I was blessed enough to grow up with both of my parents, who are still alive to this day, and I have a great relationship with them. But as a man, I always wanted to stand on my own 2 feet.
Yeah.
And I think my dad respected me more for it. Like, he's always gonna love me as a son, but it's something different when you say, nah, Dad, like, I'm gonna figure it out on my own.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think I had those moments all throughout like my life in high school, always working part-time jobs between sports and extracurricular activities. But at the same time, I think when I moved to Atlanta, because I had never lived anywhere else except New York, I think that would probably be the biggest jump off the porch moment in my life, because it was just, I was away from home. I was away from everything I knew, and part of me was scared. Part of me was like, what did I get myself into? I should have went to like Howard, or I should have went somewhere closer back to New York. I'm about 800 miles away, and people talk funny down here. They say hello to you. I'm from New York. We don't talk to nobody. But it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because there were things that I learned in Atlanta as far as like Southern values and just common courtesies and stuff that I didn't really learn in New York. I was respectful, but you don't talk to people like that. You mind your business and keep it moving. And also just going to Morehouse, you meet brothers from all over the country. So that really exposed me to different types of music. I learned about Swisher House. I learned about Northern Cali music, Too Short, E40, the whole hyphy movement. I learned about like what they had going on in the Midwest, Chicago, Detroit. I learned about 3-6 Mafia and Project Pat, because you grow up in New York at the time, you think the whole world revolves around New York, but when you get outside of New York and you learn that there are people from different cities that have different cultures of their own and different music, you just learn to appreciate it more. So
For sure.
moving out of New York, I'm always gonna love it. It's always gonna be like my hometown, but that was probably the best thing that could have happened for me.
That's what's up. That's what's up. I think talking back about that Source Awards moment too,
Yeah.
that we were talking about, you kind of put that together with saying, being in New York, sometimes you can, be stuck kind of, and thinking that, or just stuck in that conundrum of New York. And I know those artists were all trying to make sure that their voices were being heard. Just back on what we were talking about.
It was a big moment for hip hop.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
will forever live in history.
Yeah.
And if you love the culture and love the music, go on YouTube and just watch that whole show. Don't even watch the clips from it. Watch the whole show, watch the whole experience, because for me, I just remember watching it as a kid and just being in awe.
Yeah.
And I remember Bad Boy Set when Puffy came out dancing, and then B.I.G. and then Total and Craig Mack and all of them.
Yeah.
It still give me chills to this day.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. So you moved to Atlanta. What made you come to Atlanta? You said, you thought about it, after the fact, and was like, man, probably should have went to Howard. What made you come to Atlanta?
Well, it was a couple things. I knew I always wanted to go to a HBCU. I had a lot of friends that were already down at Morehouse, and you heard all these great things about Atlanta, how it's a party city, there's a lot of us down there, there's black people that are doing well. You heard about the stories of Freaknik and all these tales of just like how Atlanta's so great. So I probably came down for all the wrong reasons, instead of actually saying, okay, I'm going to this historic college that has produced so many excellent black leaders and stuff. That wasn't my mindset at the time. I was like, man, I'm ready to get out of New York. I'm going to Atlanta. I'm gonna get it popping down there.
Yeah.
And when I got down there, it was actually a very humbling experience, because New Yorkers, we can kind of have an arrogance about us to begin with. And coming down there, I was like, man, I'm gonna be the man on this campus. Then you realize there's 800 other brothers that are coming from their cities that were also the men in their city. So they're like more arrogant or as cocky as you. And you start looking at yourself like, man, like I'm not as special as I thought I was. But I think that's what made my experience at Morehouse, and what makes Morehouse so unique, is that it's like, okay, you come down there and you see all these brothers down there, and it goes back to that old saying that iron sharpens iron. So it's like, yeah, man, these dudes are smart, they're educated, they're well-spoken. It made you step up your game. Like, okay, man, this dude is tight. I need to tighten myself up. It wasn't that he was my competition. It was just, it was more of an inspirational thing. And at first, I didn't like it, because I was just like, what am I doing down here? I'm away from home. I felt like I was still kind of in the hood, because the West End back then ain't the West End it is today.
Right.
So I was just like, man, maybe I made a mistake, but I'm glad I stuck it out. I'm glad I didn't like transfer or run because I was uncomfortable. And it was probably one of the best decisions I could have made coming down here.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So when were you able to tap into the music industry, like in terms of, like, was that here in Atlanta? Like,
yeah.
did you get like
So
an
I mean,
internship?
I've always been tapped in. I was doing internships at record labels when I was in high school.
Gotcha.
So I was always tapped in, and then my sophomore and junior year, I was a college rep for Warner Brothers Records.
Okay.
And then I was throwing parties on campus my junior and senior year.
Okay.
So I was always plugged in with like entertainment and the music business, one way or another. I couldn't get away from it. Even after I graduated and I was working like a regular 9 to 5, I was still like DJing on the side. So there was always something in me that knew I was supposed to be around music one way or another.
Okay. Word. What do you, let me ask, like, in terms of, your thoughts on, when you were consuming music, like, back then, like, and, like with mixtapes, in college and things like that, and like even how people are consuming like music now, like,
Yeah.
how do you feel like the big difference is,
I mean, we was burning stuff off of Napster at the time.
Right.
I'm probably showing my age, but that was like my first streaming experience.
Yeah.
But it was so cool because, again, I was being exposed to all these different regions and all these new artists that weren't getting played in New York outside of Outkast and outside of what you heard from like Death Row. When I would download mixtapes and bring them back home when I would come home for like summer or winter break, my friends would be like, what are you listening to? What the hell is this?
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, this that Trick Daddy. This that Project Pat. What, you ain't
Right.
up on Project Pat? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
And I'd be bumping it all in my car, in my room, and they're like, man, turn that off.
The masters of
But
Lime.
now it's like everybody loves Southern hip hop.
Oh, yeah, no,
so
for
it's
sure.
become a melting pot. But yeah, that was like my first experience actually with like streaming and music.
Okay, no, that's what's up. That's what's up. So I know that you started out as a DJ.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, how did you tap into like getting into radio, and then you were a program director as well?
Yeah, man. It was all God. I tell people all the time, the most important relationship that you could have is with God, yourself, and then others. Gotta have that relationship right. So when I graduated, the job market really wasn't all that good. So I was working like part-time jobs, waiting tables. I think I sold insurance, doing mortgage sales, all that stuff. Then the housing market went bad. The company I was working for shut down. So my plan was I was gonna DJ part-time, find a part-time gig, and then go to grad school. But DJing just picked up so much for me. I was DJing pretty much 7 nights a week in the clubs and stuff. I wasn't doing like a lot of the big mainstream clubs at the time, but I was doing some significant parties and my name was getting out there. And I was like, man, I need to somehow figure out how to get on radio. So at the time, there was only 2 stations in Atlanta, V103 and Hot 107.9. So I was just very aggressive as far as like hollering at people from both stations, just trying to get an opportunity. And I was fortunate enough, or God put me in a position that I met Rashawn Ali. I was DJing a party that she was hosting, and I established that relationship with her. And she saw something in me, and I was just like, look, I just need an opportunity. And she introduced me to Empress Cersei at the time and really vouched for me. Empress Cersei was the mix show coordinator over at Hot 107.9. And I never forget, like, this was 2007, called me up like on a random 4th of July weekend, was like, hey man, you wanna come mix for us? And I couldn't believe it. And that was like my first opportunity DJing on radio. And then the assistant program director at the time, Bill Black, he heard me and he was like, hey, let's set up a meeting, and took me under his wing as like his intern. So I essentially started out as an intern.
Okay.
And but once I got in there, I realized there was more to radio than just DJing. I saw, obviously, you see the personalities, but I didn't really know what a program director was until I saw him and a man by the name of Steve Hegwood, who now runs Streets 94.5. And I saw the influence and the power that they had. They were the ones calling the shots and controlling the music. Anytime an artist or a record label would come in there, they wasn't trying to talk to the DJs. They say what's up to them. They wasn't trying to talk to the personalities. They was trying to talk to the program director. And I said, okay, that's the seat I want to sit in. That's what I want to learn. So when I got in radio, when I got the opportunity, I just learned everything I could in the building, whether it was sales, promotions, programming, how to talk on the air, all that. I was a sponge. And for my first 4 years, I wasn't even on payroll. But I was in that building so much, they swore. They was like, you're not on payroll, what? But I saw the opportunity, and I saw how it could help me build my brand up. So that, I kind of use that as example, because a lot of people, I am not doing it until I get some money. Sometimes you gotta plant the seeds, and you might not see the tree grow for years, but it's getting those roots underground, it's getting that foundation. And then after years of watering it, taking care of the soil, sunshine, it'll sprout up. But because you put in that work, you got that strong foundation, that tree ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that. Like, building that foundation is the most important thing. I mean, when it comes to so many things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So so once I got in, I worked my way up through the ranks, and everything from intern, on-air mixer, assistant programmer, on-air talent. Then I went back to grad school because I knew I wanted to get my MBA, so I did that. And then at the time, I didn't really know what my next step was. So I prayed, I was just like, God, if you still want me to be in this music business, by the time I graduate, if nothing is there, then, I'll look at other opportunities. And my last semester of grad school, I'll never forget, Bill Black, who was the assistant program director at the time, I didn't think he was gonna leave because he loved Atlanta so much, but he ended up taking a job, operations management job out in Cleveland, and then I got his spot.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, okay, that's when I really knew that, okay, I'm really supposed to be in this. Like, God got a purpose for me to be in this business. And when I got the seat, I'm always thinking ahead. So I told my boss at the time, Hurricane Dave, I said, look, I'm gonna work my ass off, but don't expect me to be in this seat any longer than 3 years. I said, I'm gonna be looking to become a program director. And I just need to know what it will take for me to get to that level. And he said, I respect that. And he said, I'm gonna put you on the fast track. He said, we're gonna go through the Hurricane Dave School of Programming, and you're gonna get the crash course. And 2.5 years later, that's when I got my first programming opportunity, or program director opportunity, in Indianapolis.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Word.
So that was a long story. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but I mean, our followers, man, people, want to hear these things.
Yeah.
That's why it's so dope to have people like yourself on the porch to be able to tell your story, because, for however many rappers, for however many, singers that we have other people like yourself, like myself, people who grew up loving this culture, who want to know how to get in on the business side and on the other side of things. So definitely, man, sharing your story is definitely, valuable.
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, for sure. So you go to Indianapolis, and then, I mean, I'm sure, because that's not like a market that you would, that's not like a popular market. So
no.
So what was it like, being there and, being I'm sure you were able to, I'm sure it was a totally different experience from being in Atlanta.
Yeah, man. Again, at that time, I only lived in 2 cities at that point, New York and Atlanta. And these were both top 10 markets. They're very big cities. But I knew I wanted to be a program director, and my mentor or boss at the time told me, he said, look, if you want to be a program director, you're not going to get Atlanta off the rip. You're going to have to go somewhere and prove yourself. You're going to have to go to a smaller market. He said, I ain't going nowhere. I done paid my dues. I done worked all these markets. He's like, you gotta go out there and work on it. And I received that. So I told him, I said, all right, well, I said the next opportunity within the company that comes up that makes sense, I'm gonna do it. And Indianapolis came up.
Okay.
And he's like, you gonna go to Indy? I said, I'm gonna go to Indy. I didn't know anything about the Midwest. Only thing I knew about Indianapolis was that the Pacers and the Colts were there. That was it. I didn't know a single soul, but I was just going up there off of faith. And I remember, like, when I moved up there, me and my pops drove the car up there, and then I flew him back to Atlanta. And then I think it had to have been like my third or fourth night there. I was still staying in a hotel because I didn't have my living space yet. It was the night of the 2016 election. And everybody was thinking Hillary was gonna win, and then Trump became president. And I remember just being so like unnerved by it, because I was in a state that I didn't know. I was in a city I didn't know, which was a very conservative and red state, and our vice president was governor there. So I would literally drive by his house and see all the Secret Service out there because he was the new vice president. And I was just like, what did I get myself into? That same feeling I had when I first went to Morehouse, I had that same feeling like, man, I made a mistake. Why, what was I thinking about? Like, I should have just stayed in Atlanta. I was good, I was making money, I was DJing, man. I had, I had a house, I had women down there and all types of stuff. But I knew, like, okay, when that fear comes, it's either gonna push you out or push you forward. And it was a great experience. I tell people all the time, I actually had a good time in Indianapolis. I met some really solid people out there. One thing about folks from the Midwest, they either mess with you or they don't. There's no like middle ground. What you see is what you get. They're real, they're authentic, and if you show them love, they're gonna show that same amount of love back. And that's what I really enjoyed about the city, was just the access that I got to everything and how quickly I was able to network and gain those resources and establish those relationships. So it was a good time. I still talk to a lot of staff up there. My general manager, who is a black man, very knowledgeable, and he really took me under his wing at the time, knowing it was my first program director experience, and he would mentor me and teach me moments and be like, okay, this is where you could have done this better, or if you have a dispute with somebody, like, this is how y'all need to work it out. So he was very patient with me because, yes, I knew programming, but he would tell me this all the time. He's like, man, you're an excellent programmer, but you need to learn the politics of this. You need to learn, like, the business side, the ugly side that nobody really wants to deal with. And that's what he really taught me. And I'm always thankful for that. But I was only in Indy for maybe 8 or 9 months. Okay. And I get a call from the senior vice president of programming at the time, and he was just like, hey, we want to move you to D.C. And I was like, D.C.? I said, why y'all want to move me there? They said, well, we just let go of the current program director, and we want you to take over. We think you being young, you would look at it through a different lens and a different set of eyes, and really just give the staff the leadership that it needed. And I was like, I gotta think about that. They were like, what, this is DC? And like I said, yeah, this is DC, but I still felt like I needed to learn more. DC is such a big market, and it's such a historic market, especially when it comes to black radio. It's right up there with Atlanta. So there was part of me that just felt like I wasn't ready. But I prayed on it. I talked to a lot of my mentors and people in my circle, and they all just agreed. It was like, this is a great opportunity. And these types of opportunities don't come up too often. So, again, I took the a step of faith, and flew my dad up again. I was like, hey, you gotta help me move again. Right. And
you gotta load the car back up.
We made the drive from Indianapolis to DC. And then I was in D.C. for like 2 years.
Okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. So then from D.C., you moved back to Atlanta and transitioned over to Pandora.
Yeah. So when I was in D.C., I learned a lot. I had my successes. I had my losses or my lessons, whatever you want to call it. But it was a valuable experience for me because a lot of the political side or the business side or the internal workings of a corporation, I really learned that in DC because you never really know how to work with a person until you work with a person that you don't necessarily like or that you disagree with. And I was fortunate enough at that time, like, yeah, there was people that didn't really rock with throughout my career, but still, it wasn't like on a level where I was on a leadership level. But being in a leadership level, being a program director, and you and another person don't see eye to eye, but y'all got to work together, that was a valuable learning experience. Because again, it's easy to work with somebody that you like, or that y'all see the eye to eye, or that you can compromise with. But working with somebody that's polar opposite of you, that as soon as y'all done working, you go your separate ways, or you went look at them, if you saw them on the weekend or say what's up to them, that's when that's when you know that you've grown as a person. And that's definitely what I really learned in DC was, and not saying that everybody was bad, but there were individuals there that if I saw them today, we really wouldn't have nothing to talk about. But I learned, okay, I still got to work with this person. I still got to respect this person. They got to respect me. And that is a lesson I could take with me anywhere I go. Whether I stay in the company, I go to the company, I do my own thing, you're always going to run across people that like you just don't like or just don't get along with. So, but at the time though, this was like around 2017. Again, I'm always forward thinking. So I was thinking about what's my next move going to be? Because one thing I hate is being or feeling complacent or feeling like, okay, I'm going to do this job for the rest of my life. No, I always want to grow. I always want to see what more is out there for me. So at that time, I'm thinking about streaming because streaming was already prevalent. It had already like revitalized the music industry, particularly hip hop, because there was a time that hip hop or the urban departments at the labels, they were shrinking. You probably know this.
Absolutely. I was working in them.
You was around during that time.
Yeah, I was working in the labels.
Yeah, it was a scary time for us because they hadn't figured out how to monetize streaming. The litigation hadn't caught up to the technology. That's how it always is, right? And and pop was really prevalent at the time. So you had a lot of pop departments working hip hop records. You had a lot of hip hop artists that were getting on pop songs because that was the climate at the time. You had all the sub labels that had popped up in the 90s and early 2000s, they were shutting down. People were consolidating. So it was a very scary time for hip hop, but streaming really revitalized black music or urban music, whatever you want to call it, once they figured out how to monetize the technology. So I was seeing all this taking place, and the aha moment for me was like going out to these festivals and seeing artists that I'd never really heard of, and people were singing this stuff word for word, and we weren't playing them on radio. They were getting $30,000 to $40,000 a gig with not one song on radio, not even mix show. And I'm like, man, there's a shift going on. And if I don't get on this wave now, I might be left in the dust. So I just started talking to people about like streaming, whether it was people at the labels, anybody that I knew that would talk to me, I would ask them like, yo, what's up with this streaming department? Or like, how does this work? Or, you know, how do you guys interact with your commerce team? Or what is digital marketing? And I was fortunate enough to meet Tuma at the time For those who don't know, Tuma, to me, is a genius. He was the
shout out to Tuma.
right. Shout out to Tuma. He was the pioneer of Rap Caviar on Spotify. But it wasn't that he just made Rap Caviar. He pretty much went around to like different labels and cities and artists and explained why playlisting is important, why streaming is important.
And I'll say that he, like yourself, was someone who came from, I mean, he was doing music video programming, like at MTV, BET.
Yeah.
I'd worked with him, you know, getting several artists, you know, like on MTV, on you know, MTV Jams, things like that.
Right.
But no, most definitely, like coming from that programming world, but then having the understanding of digital and streaming and being able to take that into the digital space.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man, absolutely. And shout out to Tuma once again, because he didn't have to talk to me, but he actually, when like we talked on the phone, he was like, man, I'm a fan of what you're doing in radio, because he has roots in D.C., so he knew the station I was programming. And we had a good conversation, and I would just pick his brain. I would just ask him, like, what's the best way to go about getting into the streaming business? Or if I go on an interview, what are they looking for? What type of questions do they ask? And he just answered them for me. And again, fast forward, I know, you know, this was one of those God moments where it was just divine intervention. I'll tell the long story because it really is kind of like crazy how God works. I was out in Oakland visiting my sister for the holidays like I normally do. And she was driving me back to the airport, and I was flying out from Oakland. I usually fly out of San Francisco, but for whatever reason, I was flying out of Oakland, and we passed the Pandora building because Pandora was founded in Oakland. And you see like the big Pandora logo on the top of this building. I remember looking up, seeing it, and I was just like, oh, I didn't know Pandora was out here. And my sister was like, oh yeah, they were founded out here. And I didn't think nothing of it at the time. But a couple of weeks later, I get a call from one of my label folks, and they were like, hey, Pandora's looking for a new head of hip hop. Your name came up. They're interested in talking to you. Can we connect you with the hiring manager? And again, 3 weeks earlier, I had seen the Pandora logo. I saw the building, and it was just like God was just planting that vision in my head or giving me a preview of what was about to happen, and I didn't even know it. And I was just like, yeah, of course. So about 10 minutes later, the guy calls me. We have a great conversation. Then he had me interview with like 6 other people. I said, well, how am I going to do that? How am I going to fly out and meet everybody? But this is how far ahead of the curve they were. They were like, oh, no, we're going to use Zoom. This was before the pandemic, and nobody really was using Zoom or knew what Zoom was. So I interviewed, and then they made me an offer, and I found out that they had a office in Atlanta. And I told them, I said, I want to be based in Atlanta. And they said, well, we kind of were hoping that you would be based in New York or LA. And I said, well, I'm definitely not going to LA. No knock on LA. I'm just not a West Coast person. I can't see myself living out there. And I said, I'm not going back to New York. I love my hometown, but I don't want to live out there anymore. My parents had already moved to Atlanta. My friends, my family, everything was down in Atlanta. I always knew I wanted to come back. So I said, look, let me go be in Atlanta. This could be an advantage for us because hip hop and culture is thriving in Atlanta, and no other digital platform or DSP has a foothold down there.
Which
and
makes no sense.
Right, exactly. I said, this is how we kind of changed the perception of Pandora. Because when they interviewed me, they asked me, they was like, well, what do you think of the platform? And I said, well, I used to use it, but then I just switched away. It was like, well, why did you switch away? I said, I really don't know. It's just, I just started using other platforms. But I said, if you guys hire me, I'll use it again. And they respected my honesty, but they agreed. They said, okay, we'll let you be based in Atlanta. And called my pops again. I said, it's time to pack up the car. I'm coming home. And, you know, made the drive down there. And this was in the beginning of 2019. And, you know, I just remember just being like, just so happy being back home, but being at home in a different capacity, because when I was in Atlanta, I was always DJing. I was always in the nightclubs and stuff. But coming back, I didn't have to do that. And I got to hang out with my friends. I got to watch sporting events or go out on regular dates and stuff. I felt like I was like getting a second chance at life and stuff. Not that I regret DJing because it opened up a lot of doors for me, but I also missed out on a lot. I missed out on seeing my friends get married or hanging out for like a game night or something like that. Or if I was trying to date somebody, I'd be like, oh no, we got to go early. And then by the time 8 o'clock rolls around, we done. I'm like, 8 o'clock, that's when we supposed to be going out.
Right.
So my life was completely different. But you know, I still had that nervousness because it was something new. I was learning new technology. I went from working in a predominantly black company, Radio One, which you see a lot of us, to a company where we were the minority. So it was a lot of adjustments, but again, I'm glad God put me in that position and I made the move.
What would you say was one of the biggest challenges moving from radio into working at a DSP?
So for me, again, good programming is good programming, whether you're programming radio or streaming. So the programming part really wasn't the issue. It was kind of learning how things worked. Because as a program director, you have a lot of influence and power in other departments. So if I needed something from my digital team or I wanted them to post something, I'd be like, go ahead and post that. Like, oh, we need to launch this at this time. My same thing with my the marketing team or promotions director. Need y'all to be out here at this, we're gonna do this. Everybody just executes. So it was more of a vertical hierarchy, the way things worked. But going over to a streaming platform, it's more horizontal as far as like the structure, and each department really has a say in what they're going to do. And I had to really learn, okay, I can't just dictate orders or give orders to these different departments. I have to work with them, collaborate with them, communicate with them, understand what their objectives are, and see how their objectives align with mine. And yes, it would be frustrating at times because I'm like, man, they don't get it. They not moving as fast as me. But once I realized, okay, I said, let me step back and just talk to this person and understand, okay, what do you see? Or why don't you think that's a good idea? And it really forced me to communicate more and step out my box more, which was a good experience. But that was like the main difference off the rip that I really had to adjust to when I first got over there. But again, I'm thankful for it because it really helped sharpen my skill set, especially my collaborating and communicating with other people.
Right. Okay, and so you started something that was really dope here in Atlanta before the pandemic. The playback series. With several artists. Can you talk about that? Yeah,
man. So the cool part about coming from radio into a streaming platform is, the streaming platform, we have more data, we have more technology, we're able to play more music and give opportunities to artists that might not necessarily get a shot on radio. But at the same time, radio still is very connected to the community. It's connected to the artist as far as the interaction that you have with the artist. So I kind of wanted to bring those practices over to Pandora. Because my thought was, and I got this from radio, especially radio in Atlanta, where you have 4 hip hop stations, the music's gonna be the music, right? We're all gonna be playing Drake, Lil Baby, Megan Thee Stallion. We just might play it in a different order, but we're all playing the same thing. It's kind of similar with the DSPs. We're all playing the hits, but what makes everybody different? When you're in radio, it's your personalities. It's how you show up in the community. it's the events that you do, the concerts that you throw. So I wanted to start doing stuff that kind of set us apart and allowed us to touch the culture and touch the community and let the industry know and consumers know that Pandora is just more than an algorithm. There's actually people in there that are programming music,
Right.
that know what they're doing, that's connected with the culture. So when I got there and I learned kind of how everything worked and got up to speed with like the tools and the technology, myself and the industry relations rep at the time, his name is Brian Calhoun, shout out to him because he taught me a lot too. We just basically was like, we're gonna open up the doors, and whoever wanted a meeting with us, whether they were an established artist or they were just somebody that was trying to figure it out, we were gonna give them time. And it wasn't about like no money or anything like that, because can't charge people, but we weren't charging people. But we just wanted to let people know that you can come up here, not only learn about Pandora, but we would talk to them about like just good practices in general. And again, shout out to Brian, because like you, he was in that digital space before digital was a thing. So he was very knowledgeable and taught me a lot. I was learning in those conversations just by listening to him talk about good streaming and digital practices and things of that nature. So we started doing that, and the playbacks kind of started organic because Common have reached out to us and said, hey, I want to come to the office and play y'all some music. So Brian was like, well, why don't you just play it in front of the whole office, right? In front of the staff. So I said, yo, that'd be cool. I said, man, who's gonna host it? I said, you know what? We should get Drama to host it. And I'd known Drama for years, and like somebody who I look up to and still look up to, I was like, man, that'd be dope if we get Drama out there. And Drama was cool with it. He was like, yeah, I'll talk to Common. So that was like the very first playback. We had no idea what we were doing, but it was successful. And then from there, we had members of the staff come up to us, was like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I work in the legal department. Have you guys thought about this, or do you guys have that? I don't want to intrude, but we were like, nah, help us out. So we had people from all the different departments in Atlanta, because again, there really hadn't been that much interaction as far as like artist interaction in Atlanta, and they were hungry for it because they knew what was going on in the city and what we could be. So like when we brought in Common, they were just like, oh my God, this is what we've been waiting for. So we had people from like the sales department, marketing, legal, all these people just chipping in and using their resources and making sure our paperwork was tight, making sure like we had the proper clearances and just helping the overall program develop and grow. And it just got to the point where we weren't even reaching out to artists anymore. Like the labels and artists were hitting us up, say, yo, we want to do what you did with Common, or we saw what y'all did with so-and-so.
That was a part of their rollout.
Yeah, exactly. Or, hey, we saw Jacquees performed up there, and Jacquees actually shouted us out on the Breakfast Club, because when he did his playback, he performed and Keith Sweat introduced him.
Oh, wow.
And that was the whole King of R&B thing.
Yeah.
And they talked about it 2 days later on the Breakfast Club, and he said, shout out to Pandora, that was my playback, yada, yada, yada. And so it just grew and took on a life of its own. And we've been fortunate enough, once we got back into the office, to start doing them again. And it's just gotten bigger and bigger, because now we have the support of like the whole entire company. So, the marketing team has come in and they're like, well, how can we support it? And how can we do this? So we did, we've been tying them into cultural moments. So in March, for Women's History Month, we did one with Trina. For June, Black Music Month and Pride Month, we brought in Saucy Santana.
Gotcha.
and did one with him. And he had that joint off the chain.
Right.
And it was right before right before he got signed and got announced as a double XL freshman. And then we did something with LVRN and Generation Now. We did that at the Gathering Spot, and over 300 people attended that, which was our biggest crowd to that point. But we were always looking like, what can we do more? And then we recently did one in the AUC for Spellhouse's homecoming. And shout out to Smino, he came through and actually partook in it. And we had 2,000 students out there. And it just all started from Common wanting to come in the office and playing music and stuff. So we just been very blessed and fortunate to create something like that connects people and gives people from all walks of life the opportunity to touch the artist, because I'm very intentional of not just inviting like the industry people or influencers. I want college students there.
Yeah, for sure.
Why? Because I was that college student.
For sure.
Just wanting to know more about the music industry. So I make sure that we invite people from Georgia State or the AUC, and now they have music business classes. So I'll reach out to the professor and be like, hey, we got this going on. Tell some of your students to come through and we'll make sure that they're good.
Yeah. Nah, I think, it's really dope for Atlanta. It's something that's much needed. Being someone who's lived in both LA and New York, I've seen, and I've worked at the labels in both cities. I mean, I've seen and have been a part of us, doing events and doing activations, for people in those cities, or even seeing like other platforms, doing those things.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Atlanta, one of the biggest things that I saw that the city was lacking was, representation of the business side of the music industry.
Yeah.
And so having, companies like yourself where, you're putting together activations where artists can connect with the fans. I mean, that's, super important, for the culture.
Yeah.
So tapping back in, man, to, Brian Calhoun, I want to give him a shout out.
Yeah.
As a black exec, as one of the pioneers in digital, someone who definitely, shared a lot of game with me, coming up early in my career in new media and digital marketing, digital media. But just speaking on, black executives, there's a huge lack of black execs in the industry. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, it's something that I've been very vocal about, and something that we have to continue to keep it on the forefront. Hip hop by far is pop culture. It's the biggest genre in the world. But when you look at the representation at the executive level, in the C-suite, on the board of directors, it doesn't reflect the amount of revenue that hip hop brings into a lot of these companies. And it's something that needs to change. It's something that I'm gonna continue to fight for. Even as an executive, I know there's still levels that I need to reach. And it's not just any one particular company. Unfortunately, it's the majority of them. And has it gotten better? Yeah, it's gotten better, but it's not where it needs to be. And it's on us to continue to fight, but we can't just do it alone. Sometimes, we'll need support from artists, especially the big artists. When they walk in these rooms, and if they don't see any of us, they need to talk about it. They need to say something. They need to apply pressure. I think Beyonce did something to that effect. I don't want to misquote it, but I think she walked into some room and didn't see one black person there, and she was just like, I can't do this. I forget the exact story, but I just remember hearing that. We need more of those types of call outs.
Yeah.
If we're really going to change the narrative, because we need to be influencing our culture.
For sure.
Not saying that it should just be all us by ourselves. No, you need a diverse group of leadership, because that's what moves, whether it's a company or organization or a country forward. You need different points of view.
Absolutely.
But right now, there needs to be more of us at these tables making these decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, even, my way of even comparing the diversity in hip hop and the way that it's needed, some of my heroes, Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
You know, like people that I looked up to that made me want to, you know, step into the business side of this. I mean, these were two totally different people,
Right.
but that came together with a common love of the culture
Yep.
and were able to, you know, mix, you know, both of their perspectives
Yeah.
and, you know, lead, I mean, you know, one of the biggest movements, or if not the biggest movement in hip hop.
Exactly. I mean, look at even more recently, 300, Kevin Liles and Leor Cohen,
Yeah, definitely.
Jimmy Iovine,
Yeah.
and Dr. Dre.
Right.
So it's not saying like it just needs to be us by ourselves in the
Right,
room, but it needs to be diverse.
Right.
And we need to have input on these decisions that are being made and where some of these resources are being allocated.
Yeah. Okay. So then what advice would you give for upcoming executives of color?
Yeah, man. I think it's a very exciting time because now you have music business courses where when I was going to college, that wasn't even a thing. You kind of had to figure it out on your own. You have a network of Black executives who went to different colleges and institutions and HBCUs that you can tap into. So I would say, one, use your resources, tap into people like myself, people like you, other people who are in place that have ran the gauntlet, are still running the gauntlet, kind of know where the bones are buried and can give you advice. I would also say, don't be afraid to make a mistake. I think so many times we think things should be perfect or we envision something a certain way. And when it doesn't turn out that way, we're like, what happened? What Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's so true. And one of the things that I've tried to live by is hold on to your dream tight, but be flexible how you get there. It's kind of like, okay, if I know I'm driving from Atlanta to Washington, D.C., right? And I'm gonna take 85 to 95. But let's say there's an accident on 85 and it's all blocked up. My navigation is gonna take me another route. I'm gonna see some different things. It might take me a little bit longer to get there, might take me shorter to get there. It's not the route that I intended to take, but it's still gonna get me to my destination, right? Instead of, you wouldn't just say, oh man, 85 is blocked up and you're all the way in North Carolina, I'm gonna turn around, forget this. I'm not even going to DC no more. Nobody would do that. Just, you know, be willing to pivot, be willing to be flexible. I tell certain artists all the time, okay, yeah, your music career might not have taken off, but your pen game is dope. Why not pen for other artists? You're still in the music game, you're still having influence, you're getting a check. Sometimes it's an even bigger check, and you have more longevity. And you don't have to deal with like a lot of the pressures that come from being a notarized artist. You can still go to the store, you still go to the movies without anybody like pulling up on you and asking you for something. That's what I mean by like still being flexible and stuff and understanding what your limitations are and what your ultimate goals are.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, got to be willing to pay those dues and, you know, like find mentors. I think like that's one of the biggest things is like being able to like tap into people and, you know, find like a mentor type of figure.
Yeah, find the mentors and don't be afraid to take the BS jobs. I think people come in saying, man, I want to be an A&R. I want to be an A&R. But you don't want to work in the mailroom. You don't want to get coffee and donuts or whatever. Oh, I'm not working for free. I told you early on, I worked my first 4 years in radio without being on payroll. That's when you can do that. You can't do that no more. But still, be willing to do those jobs. I remember hearing Will Packard speak, and the thing he was talking about was that people in the film industry, especially people who don't necessarily look like us, they'll work in the mailroom with a law degree or with a master's degree and start out in the mailroom and work their way up to a showrunner. But they understand it's like, okay, I gotta get my foot in the building.
Right.
I just gotta be in the building.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, don't really necessarily focus about getting into this department or that department. Find the department that's hiring, and once you get in the building, navigate your way through.
Right. Because companies are normally hiring from within first.
Exactly. And you can figure out like, okay, who I need to talk to
Right.
if I want to make that move.
Right.
But a lot of times, and you've worked at the label, the hottest job, everybody want to be an A&R.
Yes.
I remember I wanted to be an A&R. I didn't even know what an A&R does. I want to be an A&R. And then
Right.
you pick the beats and all that other stuff. But it's like, okay, you never see an A&R position posted on LinkedIn.
Never.
You're never going to see that. You'll see a sales job posted on LinkedIn.
Yep.
You'll see a digital content manager
yep.
posted on LinkedIn, but those aren't the sexy jobs.
Right.
But if you get in there and you learn who the decision makers are, and you start sitting in on some of those A&R meetings when you're done taking care of your business, then you can transition over there. But if you're just holding out for that position, you're gonna be holding out for a long time.
Yeah, nah, most definitely. Got to be willing to like work your way up, and yeah, like you said, the journey isn't just a straight line.
It ain't perfect.
Right.
It's gonna be ugly at times. It's gonna be times you want to give up, but that's where you just have to like really pray and ask yourself, okay, is this really for me? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And if it is, then you're gonna figure out a way to make it happen. I'm a firm believer. God isn't gonna give you a vision without the provision.
So on the artist side of things, what would you say are like some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen artists make? And you've seen this from both sides. 'Cause
Yeah.
You've watched artists come in on the radio side, and then now being in the digital space, watching artists, come in this new era of the game.
Yeah. Whew, where do I start? I think one, certain artists try to compare themselves to what they see or deem as success.
Right.
There's already a Lil Baby. There's already a Drake. It's like, who are you? Who's your audience? What's your style? So finding out who they are, finding out the people that rock with them, and taking the steps to do that. I think the other mistake that artists make is they invest so much time into the look, or they invest so much into the music that they're not investing in ways to get their music out there. So instead of going to a club or going to the strip club and throwing 5 racks in the air and you filming it on IG just to make it look good,
Right.
that 5 racks could have gone to somebody like you who could have set up a dope digital campaign for them, or a Facebook campaign, or an influencer campaign to start gaining those fans and getting their music out there.
Absolutely.
So I think it's just allocation of resources, allocation of funds, and then making the mistake of saying, okay, if my song gets on this playlist, I'm out of here. Or if my song gets on radio, I'm out of here. No, you gotta build that story up.
Right.
You gotta build that story up. I tried to look out for my people when I first got in the streaming world, because I'm thinking, oh, I got all these places I could program their music, but we get the data back so quickly, and if you see their skip rates are high, their thumb up ratio is low, that song will come off as quickly as you put it on. So you gotta establish the story and build your way up.
Yeah.
Most of the time, like as a curator, yeah, we'll step out on certain songs, but we can't step out on everything because people want a good listening experience. They want to hear stuff that they know and that they can sing to.
Yeah. So many people want that instant gratification. That, okay, I paid you. All right, press this button. Give me a million views. Give me a million streams.
Give me the cheat code.
Right, exactly.
Everybody want the cheat code.
Most definitely.
And if everybody's using the cheat code, they ain't the cheat code no more.
Right.
not everybody's gonna go viral.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what happened a few years ago with, you know, where a lot of the Spotify playlists, you know, like people were getting exposed for like running like the fake playlist, bots, you know, different things like that.
Yeah.
And so that instant gratification, that, you know, turn me up button.
Turn me up button. But if you look at the artists that really have like a strong fan base and are still very relevant, a lot of them didn't just shoot up overnight, or just didn't have that one viral moment. And that's not going for all of them. I mean, because like, I mean, a good example, Lil Nas X, he had Old Town Road, but he did the smart thing. He got with a good management team, he got good people around him, and was able to turn that into the superstar that he is.
Right.
But if you look at like the Jack Harlows, the Megan Thee Stallions, and the Lil Babies and stuff, these were years in development before they became the superstars and performing and hosting Saturday Night Live. This is years of them doing small clubs or doing shows for free, getting themselves out there, doing features for, you know, no money at all and stuff. It goes back to that tree example. They put in the work.
Yeah.
You know, they established their roots, and now they're bigger than their music, where you have a lot of artists whose songs are bigger than them, and if they walk down the street, nobody would really know who it is, but they know your song. You don't want to be in that position. You want them to buy into you,
Right.
and your music,
Right.
not just your music.
Right, yeah. Because, I mean, it's really like they have to buy into the brand, and then they'll want to listen to the music. And
Exactly.
That's what a lot of people have to, you know, understand. Like, I'm always, you know, when consulting with people, making sure that they understand, like, the brand is the most important thing. People like you, they'll go to listen to the music. And
I'll find you. If you're doing everything right, I'm going to seek you out. A person who I have a lot of respect for, that I love the way he's moving, is LaRussell right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's just, it kind of reminds me of like how Chance the Rapper, when he was first moving around, and just how he did things so differently. It wasn't the norm, and he established like this huge fan base and stuff. I kind of see LaRussell on that, because it's not like, he's not like going for those viral moments or anything like that. He's building that organic fan base and selling hard copies of a project and making money off of it.
He's a true definition of grassroots.
Grassroots.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care if you have a million Instagram followers. If you can't move or sell out a venue with 100 people, what good is that million followers?
Right.
You can't sell 100 hard tickets with all those followers. That's not a good conversion ratio.
Yeah.
I'd rather artists have 20,000 Instagram followers, but they're selling out spaces that could fit 1,000 people. That's how you know you have a real good fan base. And I'm talking about hard ticket sales. They paying money to come see you.
Yeah. Nah, yeah. His movement it's incredible. Like, I haven't seen anything like that in a while.
I haven't seen anything like that in a while. Like I said, it gives me Chance the Rapper vibes. Not saying that they're doing the same thing, but just the way, like when Chance was moving around and establishing himself, like nobody had really seen anything like it at that time.
Yeah.
You know, because he was really tapping into that streaming world and that indie side when streaming was still getting its legs and stuff. So it's really interesting. I'm curious to see like what path he takes and the trajectory that he's on.
Yeah, no, for sure. What advice would you give upcoming artists coming up, and you know, with the understanding that streaming is so important? Like, how should, you know, these artists like go about getting themselves known?
Yeah, understanding the different platforms, what they represent, the tools that are available to you. A lot of times people say, oh, I'm gonna go to this platform, or my streams are going crazy over here. But all of them play a key role, whether it's a Pandora, SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, Deezer, Audio Mac. They all cater to different listeners. And you don't know, as a new artist, you don't know where your listeners are gonna come from. You don't know where your fan base is gonna come from. So it would be in your best interest to engage with all these platforms and then take the data from all these platforms and see what overlaps. Because there might be some differences, but you'll see some common themes. Like, okay, I'm getting a lot of streams in Austin. Like, I have a good fan base down there. Maybe I need to tap in with that market. Or, man, this market looks a little shaky, a little weak. Maybe I need to put more money or resources into that instead of going somewhere where I'm already established. So really tapping into all the streaming platforms and getting all that revenue. I would also say understanding the business of things, having good people around you, not just a bunch of yes people, because your mama and all your cousins and people on the block, they gonna tell you, oh, your music is great. Oh yeah, man, your music is fire. Get an average person's opinion, somebody that doesn't know you or anything like that. And if they tell you that they not feeling your music, don't get offended. Just, reevaluate yourself. Don't use all your money to make a song and don't have any money left over to market the song. Get a good distribution. A distribution company to distribute your music and understand what level you're on. Don't just go to this distribution company because you say, oh, they popped off this person, they popped off that person. They did it for a reason. That person probably had things going on or was already established and moving themselves, and they saw that and was like, okay, we're gonna help take you to the next level. But understand what each distribution company offers. Can you get somebody on the phone if your stuff isn't uploaded right? These are the little things that people sometimes neglect, or artists sometimes neglect, or they don't have the people around them to take care of that, or they're not willing to pay somebody like yourself that understands all that and can handle all that, so you can focus on being an artist.
Right. No, most definitely. Yeah, like those, like some of those small admin things that are like so vital, and making sure that in the future you're getting paid for your music because all of your songs are registered correctly and you got your ISRC codes and like things like that. So it's all those things. Do you have a sound exchange account? Things like that. Brian Calhoun will tell you, he used to work at Sound Exchange. There are people that still haven't picked up their checks and just leaving money out there on the table. Making sure your paperwork is right, regardless if you're signing with a label or not. You want to have a good attorney that understands your contracts and understands how to get you paid. So, and if you're just starting out, again, taking the proper steps to establish yourself. So if you're starting out with 10 followers, okay, how can I turn that 10 into 20? How can I turn that 20 into 100? How can I turn that 100 into 1,000? And always just building. Not looking for the shortcut or the cheat code. Oh, I'm gonna buy me 20,000 followers. That's gonna get exposed. Because you have all those followers, but then when the engagement doesn't match, then you're exposed.
Exactly.
It's like getting butt shots in the legs way skinnier than the ass. You know what I'm saying?
That's a great example. I'm gonna start using that one.
I'm telling you. So, what like you've been someone who's always been forward thinking, in the game, and always been a few steps ahead. Where do you think the future of music lies?
Man, I think about that a lot. I think it's forever changing, especially now because technology is changing so rapidly. So, 4 years ago, who would have thought that TikTok would have the influence that it has on the music game? 10 years ago, who would have thought streaming would have the influence that it has? So it's always thinking about, okay, what's next? Can't really predict it, but you can kind of see what's going on. You have the metaverse, which hasn't taken off the way people expected it to, but it's still there. It's still growing. You're still gonna have platforms like TikTok that influence algorithms or influence people's listening on streaming platforms and stuff. You know, I don't have the clear answer, but what I will say is just pay attention to the technology, because usually where the technology is going is where the music or the next wave of music patterns go. So if you're seeing like this new social media platform pop up, not saying you got to go all the way in, but at least look into it.
Right.
Because again, 3 years ago, nobody was really thinking about TikTok like that. But now it's like, it's breaking artists. That's why I say look into the metaverse. Is it as big as what people think it could be? No, not yet. But it might get there one day. It might explode next year. You never know. But you at least want to know about it and have a foothold in it. So that's kind of my thing, is just like keep your eyes open and never be stuck in like what's happening now or what's hot right now or what's like trending right now. We don't know where TikTok is going to be in 3 or 4 years. It might be something new, it might regress, or it might be even bigger. We just don't know.
Right. I can dig it. J1, you got any other shout outs? Anybody want to shout out?
Man, shout out to you, bro. Like I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing for the culture, and I love the fact that you're giving different artists opportunities to speak on your platform and stuff. So and giving me this opportunity. So shout out to you. We need more influencers and bloggers like yourself here in Atlanta, because we talked about New York and LA. A lot of people have to feel like they always got to go out there to make their press runs. And yes, they're very important markets, but we have a lot of culture, we have a lot of artists down here, and we have a lot of media outlets that connect to people all over the world.
Absolutely.
So, you know, continue to do what you're doing, and, you know, I just say shout out to God, man. Always give my praises to God.
That's what's up, the big God.
Yes.
That's what's up. All right, y'all, we got J1 dropping off the porch with us.
Yes.
And we out.
All my life, been grinding all my life. Sacrifice, hustle, pay the price.